Hello everyone, welcome and take your seat. I am Professor Fallout, here to teach you the ways of Gambit and make sure you get an A so you don't get F'd out on the battlefield. Today we're going to talk about one of my favorite elements of Gambit, and that is invading. Without invading, Gambit would be like a cupcake without frosting, a waffle with no syrup. It's what makes the game type even more exciting, and if you learn how to both do it properly as well as defend against it, you can help your team win way more often. Now, I've heard that there are Gambit teams out there that truly believe that not invading at all is an overall more effective team strategy. They'd rather have their entire team focus on moat collecting. That is crazy. Yeah, invading is definitely a gamble, but let's do some risk assessment here. What does invading cost your team? One Guardian. Alright, what do you stand to lose? Well, you could get killed right away when you go in, not wiping anyone, and that's time you could have spent helping your own team by killing PvE enemies and grabbing moats. What do you stand to gain? Well, you could wipe the entire team, ruin their momentum, force them to drop moats, force them to burn either power ammo or even their supers to try and shut you down, and ultimately delay their progress greatly by forcing them to deal with you. All that for the low cost of one Guardian. Your return on investment here is potentially huge, and in my mind, there is no reason to not go for invading when given the opportunity. When you and your team go into a game of Gambit, you should collectively pick one or ideally two members of your team to be designated invaders. That's all you need. When the invasion portal opens, there shouldn't be a four-way argument between teammates on who gets to go in and why. Be organized, determine in advance your primary invader, and have a backup invader ready to go in the event that the primary invader isn't totally ready. With invaders determined in advance, your other teammates can focus their efforts entirely on PvE shredding and moat collecting. They don't have to worry about possibly equipping halfway decent invader-friendly weapons. They don't have to compromise their loadouts at all. They now only have one job: shred PvE enemies and bank moats. On a well-oiled Gambit team, everyone has a job and everyone does their job. Who should be your team's primary invader? Well, whoever is the best slayer, or whoever is a pretty good slayer but is also very well equipped. Remember, when invading, light level advantage is enabled. By the way, you'd be shocked at how many people don't know that, which is kind of funny. It's written right in the description of the freaking game type, for crying out loud. But whatever, even if you're attorney level god killer in PvP, that's not gonna mean a whole lot if your light level is laughably low. When you've got your invaders picked, gear the hell up. Pick weapons that are good for invading. If you want my opinion, and I know you do, here are the current top tier baller MLG Gambit Invader picks: the Queenbreaker, the Sleeper Simulant, the 1000 Voices if you're a lucky asshole that has one, or really any linear fusion rifle that you feel good about using. You have to get in relatively close, but the Thunderlord can also put in a lot of work. I know that's a fairly narrow range I just gave you, but pick whatever you feel best about using. You may have noticed that all weapons I've recommended for invading happen to be power weapons. This brings me to my own personal rule of thumb for invading. If you don't have A, power ammo, or B, your super fully charged, guess what? You ain't invading. Your secondary invader is, because they probably have one of those two things ready in the event that you don't. I mean, yeah, you can invade without power or super, but my question to you is, why? Why would you? In almost every game of Gambit I've ever played, the game is set up in a way that you can almost always invade with either of those two things, so why wouldn't you? I can already hear the groaning in the comments section now. Oh, can't even invade unless you have power? God, not good enough to kill with a primary Fallout? Goodness has nothing to do with it, you nerd. Gambit, when you boil it all down, is a race against time. Your team and the other team are racing one another. First team to finish wins, and it's totally legal to mess up your opponent and trip them while they race. It's like Mario Kart, and your invader is the blue shell. Your job as the invader is to F up the other team's momentum as hard as you can with the best tools available to you. Now is not the time for a misguided sense of pride. If you want to show off how much of a badass you are and invade the enemy team with just a legendary hand cannon, go for it, my dude. I'm not saying you can't do a good job by doing that, but don't come crying to me when you get picked off faster than you can say buff primaries. In Gambit, the first power ammo spawn pops up right around the time of your team's potential first invade. Because of that, as a rule of thumb, my team always saves the very first power ammo spawn for our team's primary invader. If your primary invader happens to get a random power ammo drop from a wave 1 PvE enemy, then great. They can skip grabbing the first power ammo spawn and let another player have it. The point is, you can always send your first invader to the enemy team with power ammo in hand. You know, if you want to. When you push through and begin invading, you have to immediately assess the situation right when you arrive. What I like to do is to take a second right away and look completely around, making sure you know where every enemy is right away. It's tempting to run right in and start shooting, but if some jerk guardian catches you on your blind side, well, that sucks and you really have no excuse. You have the ability to see the location of every guardian. Why not use that ability? Ideally, you're never gonna get caught off guard. I like to play it kinda safe if I'm my team's primary invader. Meaning when I go in to invade, I'll take a full auto shotgun with me as my backup. That way, if any enemy guardian tries to roll up on me, they get a mouthful of pellet spread. The Ikelos shotgun happens to be a great pick, especially because it also is a top tier gambit weapon for the PvE side. Once you're in, determine where every enemy is and that you won't get flanked, and then decide who to go for first. Your obvious primary targets are any enemy carrying a ton of moats or any enemy with moats who is close to banking them. Most importantly, take your time. I know, invading in Gambit really does feel like a scramble, but 30 seconds is actually plenty of time to get the job done. But Fallout, if I don't act right away, I might not kill anyone. Believe it or not, sometimes that's actually okay. Remember, what is Gambit? A race against time. If you go in and invade the enemy team and they all hide at the back of the map, huddled together for protection, you still want to kill them. But at the very least, you're making them waste time. That is your end goal, after all. Every second that enemy team spends hiding in fear of you is a second they won't get back. Those are precious seconds of them not fighting PvE enemies, not gathering moats, not banking those moats, not summoning their primeval. You are making them waste time in a game where time is crucial. Hopefully while you're doing all that, your team keeps working back on the home front. That being said, still try to kill everybody, obviously. Invading with your super can be very effective, but also very risky depending on the map and depending on your super. Most Gambit maps are very large with wide open sight lanes. If you're going to use your super, be smart about it. Don't just jump 50 feet up into the air and then descend on the enemy team. You're gonna get shredded. Get as close to them as you can without exposing yourself out in the open, and then pop your super and then go ham. Now, I don't always invade with my super, but when I do, I prefer ones that make me harder to hit. Ionic Blink Stormcaller and Nova Warp Voidwalker are heavy top tier choices for invading. For all you Titan bros out there, ranged Hammer Titans can be pretty effective. And for hunters, you could go Golden Gun, but the lack of extra incoming damage reduction does kind of suck. I mean, really, you can get the job done with any super if you play it well enough, but close range supers that enemies can run away easily from are gonna make it kinda hard. As you probably all know, there are 3 main opportunities to invade. Once when your team banks 25 moats, another when your team banks 50, and then again finally when your enemy team has summoned their primeval. During that phase, you can invade repeatedly with a portal cooldown until the round is over. Communication can really help your team out when finding the right time to invade. Hypothetical scenario, your team has 48 moats in the bank, and you notice the enemy team has a thick, juicy gray bar, just begging to be invaded because they have a lot of moats that they could lose. You look over and see that your nearby teammate has exactly 2 moats. Now normally you want to deposit moats when you have enough to send over a blocker, but in this scenario you should call out to your teammate, tell them to dunk right away so you can open the portal and invade early. Hopefully they realize and understand the situation, they know that the early dunk would be totally worth it given the current situation. Always communicate. You might be the one going through the portal, but invading is still a team effort. When the enemy primeval is out, things get tricky. There's always the question of Do I invade right away or do I wait? You might not want to go through right away, because if you wait for the enemy team to do a little damage to their primeval first, then you go through and begin killing, you'll be able to heal their primeval in the process, which is cool. However, there are a lot of very organized teams out there that have mastered the art of shredding the primeval in literally seconds. Teams like my team. If you wait too long and you're playing one of those teams, you might end up wasting the opportunity and losing. It's really up to you, there's no right answer. On the first round, you might be able to play it safe by waiting a little and finding out what type of team you're playing against. Are they a hyper-organized, insta-primeval shredding team, or are they a little less efficient? If you notice they're taking their time, you could play it a little risky and wait to invade. If you're waiting to invade and then they insta-shred the primeval, you'll know for sure to invade right away the next round when they summon primeval. Defending against an invader. Not an easy thing. You can't see them, but they can see you. Fortunately for you, there are only 3 predetermined areas of each map where an invader can drop in, and usually they won't drop into an area if you and your teammates are already there or extremely close by. So when you get invaded, all you have to do is keep your eyes peeled on the other 2 locations. If you get killed by an invader, and you will get killed by an invader, for the love of God, call out to your team and tell them where the invader killed you from. There is nothing more infuriating for your teammates than having you die and hear you go, "Oh, that's bullshit," or whine about how you totally hit your shot but the game didn't register it, the invader hit you with X weapon that you hate and only loser scrubs use, your controller effed up, your grandma called, the sun was in your eyes, blah blah blah. Curb the sodium and give your teammates the call out. They can finish the invader, revive you, and everything will be peachy. Organized teams working together is what holds off invaders and wins games. Also, when being invaded, keep an eye on the timer. If you're alive, you know how much longer the invader will be around. If the timer is literally about to expire, don't challenge the invader. I can't tell you how many times I've seen teammates simply lose their patience and pop out of perfectly good cover to challenge a full health invader when there have been literally 2 seconds left on the clock. And they were holding moats! This is even worse when the primeval is out, because you're hurting your own team by healing the primeval when you die. Killing the invader is important, but when you hit a certain point on the timer, it's just more worth it to not challenge and let the invader vanish. When invading during the primeval phase, you have to be extra careful. As I said, a lot of teams out there can and will completely shred the primeval in a matter of seconds. When my team gets invaded during the primeval stage, once we kill our invader, it's game over. With the right tools, shredding the primeval is like kickboxing a one-legged old man. During primeval phase, go in with the assumption that once your invasion is over, that's it for that round. Don't assume you'll get another chance. Do your absolute best to not get picked off. Lay in the shadows a little bit. Let the other team sweat it out. After all, getting invaded during primeval phase makes most teams super jumpy and extra cautious. Take advantage of that, especially if you've jumped in right away. All right, let's sum up. Pick your invaders in advance. 1 primary, 1 secondary. Gear up with top-tier invader weapons, most of which are power weapons that can easily and quickly one-shot enemies from across the map. Just in case you get rushed while invading, bring a good close-range weapon like a full auto shotty or whatever you prefer to protect yourself up close. When you're learning the art of invading, don't go in unless you have power ammo or your super is ready to go. Make sure your light level doesn't completely suck. When you're in, take a quick second to look around, locate all the enemies, and formulate a plan of attack. Pick targets who have a lot of moats. The longer you stay alive while invading, the better, and above all else, make the enemy waste time when being invaded. Stick together, keep your eyes on the predetermined spawn areas, and for the love of God, communicate and call out where the invader is. And that's it. Congrats on passing Invading 101. Now go, get out there and shred. If you've got any great invasion clips, screw it, link them down below in the comment section. I like seeing stuff like that. If you're new to the channel, please click on subscribe because I did ask you nicely, and like the video if you enjoyed today's content. Thanks for watching. See you next time.